Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coffee Chat with Jeannie and Cindy, brought to you by Bnow. I've got my little dolphin. What you got there?
I just have my little, whatever greenstone coffee cup,
Nice.
and yeah, and it works great. So, yeah.
As long as it holds the coffee. So today we want to talk about the evidence that God has your back.
Yeah.
Let's get started with you, Jeannie.
Well, this is such an interesting topic because how many times, Cindy, have you and I ever prayed and we just feel like we're hanging out there by ourselves? We want to believe, we want to think that God is responding to us. But sometimes, and I've even said this, it's kind of like, well, that really has not been my experience. We have all of these statements and stuff like that. But, you and I have talked about many times the idea of keeping a gratitude journal.
Right.
And there's a lot of good to be said about waking up and being grateful and doing a gratitude list. But have you found, Cindy, because I know I have, that after a couple of days, it kind of becomes mundane and routine and rote? You get up and you go, I'm so happy and grateful for my home. I'm happy and grateful for my husband. I'm grateful for my dog, my health, my, whatever it is, and grateful, and it feels good. But then after a while, for me, I just start repeating this stuff. It's like, I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my home. I'm grateful for my business partner, Cindy. I'm grateful, whatever. So what my idea is, and this is not my idea, I heard it years ago from somebody else, but to keep an evidence journal that God is listening to you. Mm-hmm. And so, do I have evidence that God is really paying attention to me and responding to me personally? Have you ever had, and we've talked about these people who kind of, they're sort of smug and know-it-all. And, we talk about, well, God answers prayers. And they're like, yeah, whatever, that probably would have happened anyhow. That's just, coincidence. We hear that, right? And so they poo-poo the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And it reminded me of this story that I had heard about this old cowboy who got on a plane. He had his book and he was settling in. And this other guy came and sat down beside him and said, hi. He said, we're going to be on this flight for a little while. He said, would you like to talk? It goes faster if you're talking. And the guy was like, okay. What do you want to talk about? And he's, well, I'm an atheist. So already we're off to a good start, right? And he said, so what I would like to talk about, he said, is why God does not exist, why there is no heaven and hell, and why there is no afterlife. And that should be fun. And so the old cowboy puts his book away and he said, well, he said, that could be interesting. He said, but first, let me ask you a question. He said, sure. He said, so a deer and a cow and a horse all eat the same thing. They all eat grass. And yet a deer excretes little pellets, a cow excretes flat patties, and a horse excretes big clumps. Why do you think that is? The guy was like, well, I don't know. And he said, okay. He said, so what makes you qualified to discuss whether there's a God, a heaven and a hell, or an afterlife? And you don't know shit.
Yeah, that's very valid, actually, because obviously he was ready for controversy.
Oh, yeah.
The guy was ready for, let's go at it. I had that experience happen when I was in Redondo.
What happened?
My girlfriend and I were sitting at a bench, and this man came by and started talking to us. And he started saying things that were so ridiculous and so stupid, obviously to be controversial. And I looked at him and I said, "Are you a scientist?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, I'm a scientist." I said, Yeah. A lot of scientists like to say, oh, I'm agnostic because I'm a scientist, or I'm an atheist because I'm a scientist. I figured it all out, with science. There's no God, there's just science. And so he was going down that path. And I kept saying, please leave. Just please go anywhere else but here, right now. And he
Stop breathing my air.
And he wouldn't leave. He wouldn't leave.
No, because he wanted controversy. Yeah.
As I'm looking at the ocean and the sand and the beautiful scenery up in Palos Verdes, and there's somebody standing in front of me saying there's no such thing as God. And it just didn't.
So what happened? Did he finally leave? Or did you leave? Yeah.
Yes, he finally did. And my girlfriend who's with me, and you know me pretty well, Jeannie, I'm pretty non-controversial.
Yeah.
And she's known me since the second grade. And she said, I've never seen you talk like that, Cindy.
I've been hanging around Jeannie. What would Jeannie, that WWJD, what would Jeannie do?
Yeah. Jeannie would say, go now.
Now.
Just, he wasn't getting, I said, please, let's stop this conversation.
Right.
Make no sense to me. We're not going to get anywhere. And these obnoxious people that do that are trying to prove that there's no God, I just have no energy for them, no time for them, not a second. And I couldn't get rid of him. He had this wonderful dog, though, that was laying at my feet. So I kept petting the dog, but that was the only good thing about this thing. But
it goes back to, he wanted to be right. A Course in Miracles says it this way: would you rather be right or would you rather be happy? Mm-hmm. And he wanted to be right. You wanted to be happy.
Yes.
And that's the whole thing. We don't become, I just got a thing this morning from a friend, and she does a Monday morning deal, and said, you don't become happy when you are successful. You become successful when you are happy with what you are doing.
Nice.
Which I love.
Nice.
Yeah.
I always said that real success is how you make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah.
That would be my definition of success. Because sure, I've got awards sitting in my closet right now.
Sure.
That doesn't make who I am. In that moment, it was nice, but now it's so long, it's way back, and it doesn't define who you are.
It doesn't make you happy today. We choose to be happy, which really is the perfect segue into what I wanted to talk about.
Right.
Because, my sister lost her husband, and it was pretty sudden. Right. 3 days before Christmas, he was not feeling well, but he went into the hospital in September, and he never came out 91 days later. Yeah. And the doctors couldn't believe it. They were like, you have no other comorbidities. I mean, you don't have heart problems. You don't have high blood pressure. You don't have diabetes. Right. And they diagnosed him with leukemia. And they said, oh, we treat this all day long. You'll be out of here. Mm-hmm. Well, he didn't. He never left. Mm-hmm. And it was just stunning. And, so she had, just this unbelievable shock, Cindy, saying, what the hell just happened here? Mm-hmm. And they had sold their house. So they'd been leasing kind of this big house till they could find something else to buy. Well, she had to move out of that house because she didn't need the big house. She had to find another house. She had just bought this big, beautiful mattress, king size mattress, for her husband to come home and, have a nice soft place and stuff like that. She found another house, which was a miracle in itself. It just fell in her lap. Mm-hmm. Perfect, everything, but a lot smaller. So she ended up, Cindy, giving her big, $3,000 refrigerator away to one of her granddaughters who's married and has a baby and bought a house. She gave away big furniture. She gave away the bedroom set. I mean, all this stuff. And, during that time, it was a financial and an emotional hit. And she was just stunned and just couldn't believe what was going on. But I kept saying, because miracles kept happening. she had to sell her husband's vehicle. Well, last year we had all those hailstorms and both of their vehicles got beat to death.
Mhm.
And so the insurance paid for them to be totally reskinned and not reskinned, but replaced, even
Right.
the windshields, everything. They look like brand new cars, even though they're 8 years old. She was like, I don't want people coming to my house, especially guys,
Mhm.
and driving the car and stuff. So she put it on a neighborhood little board, and some guy 2 blocks over, he and his wife had lived in the neighborhood for 40 years. He said, my wife has always wanted a Honda Pilot. He came over, paid top dollar, it was gone. And I said, let's start keeping an evidence journal
Oh,
that
nice.
God is keeping you in his sights. And
Absolutely.
so she did, and she started like, okay, so there's evidence. I said, God has your back on this one.
Mhm.
It was one thing after another. So she had to buy a queen size mattress, because it wouldn't fit in her new place,
Mhm.
and had to get rid of the furniture, had to get rid of the headboard. So one day, this is so cute, she had texted me and she said, I'm in this beautiful resale shop. She said, what do you think about this headboard? Do you think it's too gaudy? Well, she sent me this picture. Oh my God, Cindy. It was like a designer piece. It is gorgeous.
Ornate and carved and
Ornate, carved. It has like real soft gray leather, silver, these little embedded mirrors in it. And here's the story. The woman who had put it on consignment had paid $6,500 for this. It's designer. The consignment person put it on for $3,000. Nothing happened. Marked it down to $1,500. Nothing happened. 2 hours before my sister walked in the door, they marked it down to $300. And I said, I seriously do think it's too gaudy. You should let me buy it.
of course. When it comes to God
shows off.
Oh yeah. And I have these wonderful conversations with people, but my favorite thing to say to people when it comes to God is it's okay if you don't believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that. And of course, I'm not going to judge them.
Yeah.
But if you want to believe in God and you want to have this amazing experience, pretend it's real.
Amen.
Pretend it's real. Pretend you can talk to God. Pretend you're getting messages from God. And all of a sudden, you're going to start realizing that it is real.
Mm-hmm.
It is real. So just
whatever things you ask, believing will be done.
Exactly. So
I love that.
Just pretend. Pretend God is real. Pretend you hear God's voice. Have a conversation with, and if the responses that you're getting come from a loving place, a very wise, loving place, guess what? That's God.
It is.
Because you're not that smart.
We know that. But I love that, Cindy. I just love that idea.
Yeah,
she had, because she'd given away so much of her furniture, she had beautiful stuff. Mm-hmm. So she had, and it's a smaller place. Right. But she had these pieces of furniture there, and they kind of looked like they were all hanging out by themselves. And she's like, she had a rug, and then she was like, yeah, it doesn't quite work that way. So to make a long story endless, my sister had, as I was saying, she needed a rug, but she wasn't really looking for a rug. So the other day she went into this resale shop and she just happened to spy in the back underneath some stuff, this rolled up rug. And what she could see of it was kind of really interesting. And so she asked the people, she said, tell me about that rug. How big is it and what is it? And they went, oh, well, we don't know. We just got it in. We haven't even measured it or anything. So they unrolled it. It was 10 by 13. Perfect. It is so plush. All these beautiful colors. It is so beautiful. So she's thinking, I really don't need to be spending more money, but if it's $75 or less, I'll buy it. She turned it over and it says, hand tufted by wonderful people in India. And it's gorgeous. So Karen said, well, what do you think? To the people, she said, how much you want for it? And the lady said, $29. She went home, looked it up. That is a $6,000 rug. $29, $6,500 headboard for $300. And it's just been one thing after another. And also, here's the other thing. She is not a joiner. She's a professional person. She doesn't do groups, but she's just been grieving so hard and lonely and shocked and moved and everything. And a relative had lost her husband suddenly, like 5 years ago, and said, there's this wonderful organization. It's called Grief Share. It's free. It's all over. And she said, you pay $20 for the workbook. And she said she found it. It was close to where she is or where she used to live. It was starting like in 4 weeks. It's a 12-week class. She just wrapped up the 12th week and it has changed her life. And I said, this is another proof. God has your back. Yeah. And it reminded me, in Hebrews 11:1, it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not yet seen. And in the Old Testament, it says, the Father loves us. God loves us. And it said, if a son asks the father for a fish, will he give him a serpent? No. If he asks him for bread, will he give him a stone? No. So, what I would invite people to do, and I love your idea of just pretend you're having a conversation with God, pretend that you are having these divine ideas, but, get a journal and keep an evidence journal. Mm-hmm. Evidence that God is paying attention to you personally. Mm-hmm. And, my husband and I have just been through a lot of stuff and trying to, sell some businesses and stuff like that, which looks like that's coming about. But I'm paying attention, and I know you are too. It's like God has your back, don't you think, Cindy? Absolutely.
And when I get a worry thought, I'll just look up in the sky. Yeah. And then I just see, I imagine the word trust just written straight across the sky.
I love that.
The word trust.
I love that.
And then then peace just comes all over me, because that's what happens. When we're anxious about something to happen, or we're anxious for, this morning I had a friend call that was in duress, and I was anxious for her. This kind of thing. Just look up in the sky and just imagine the word trust, and then just throw it there. You can do this with your imagination. Just see the words trust. And the sky's so vast. I always tell my grandkids, I love you bigger than the sky. Mm. And the Native Americans, how many thousands of years do we relate God to the heavens above, in the vast
great spirit.
The great spirit, all of that. So for me, that works. Just looking up and saying trust.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love this, and I do hope that we get some feedback and people saying, I got an evidence journal, I'm keeping track, and of course you're grateful. There's nothing wrong with being grateful.
Right.
But evidence is so strong.
Yes.
And it is that faith, it is the evidence of things that you hope for, that you have asked for, but they just haven't showed up yet. But now they've showed up. And I think it's huge.
Also, pay attention, because miracles happen to you every single day.
Yes, they do.
Every single day. And that's when appreciation kicks in.
Yes. Yeah.
Because whenever the tire does go flat, mm-hmm. or you end up in a hospital like you did recently, being sick, or those kind of things, that's when we realize that there's contrast. But most days we're healthy. Most days the tires are working. Most days. So it's important also to acknowledge things that we take for granted sometimes, that they'll work.
Talking about that tire, do I have time for one little tiny story?
Of course you do.
Okay. Well, I know you're the timekeeper on this one, but it just reminds me of, I spoke in Amarillo years ago at a
Uh-huh.
church, and I had found $100 bill in my jeans pockets that was not there. So I was talking about how God showed up, and I passed it around. And afterwards, this rancher came up to me and he said, Miss Jeannie, he said, I want to tell you something. I've got a good story. And I went, okay. And he said, I started coming to this church a couple of years ago when I went through a very bad divorce, and my wife took the kids and everything, and I've been paying a lot of money out. And he said, I've just been struggling. And I woke up not too long ago, and he said, I needed $60. I needed $60 to pay my electric bill. And he said, I'd already tapped out all my relatives and friends, and, I didn't know what to do. And he said, I'm driving down this Caliche Road, and I hear this whoop, 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 whoop on my tire. And I was like, really, God, for real? I've been doing my affirmations. I've been doing my gratitude. I've been, really getting into it. I do not need a tire problem. And he's like, slammed the door. I walked around, and he said, the tires were all fine. But I knew that I heard this thing. And he said, I didn't know what to think. And he said, I looked over, and on the barbed wire fence, exactly where I stopped, were three $20 bills. Exactly what I needed.
I love it. And
Evidence that God was paying attention to him and his direct needs, and supplied it in the exact amount,
in the
at the right time, at the right place.
Yeah, and I talk about that time I needed $10,000.
Yeah.
And $9,965 showed up. And
I can float the 35.
Which was exactly what I needed. It
Right.
wasn't more than what I needed, but it was exactly what I needed. Isn't that interesting? Well, this has been fun.
Yeah, this has been so fun.
Yeah,
I love our talks.
Yes, I do. So evidence that God is working in your life, write it down. God loves it. When appreciation is the highest vibration.
Yeah, it is.
In the world. I love you, Jeannie.
I love you. Thank you. Talk
Okay.
to you soon. Mwah.